I now call on the member for Frome. And before I call on the member for Frome, just remind members of the House that this is the member's first speech and that she should be accorded the normal courtesies and respect afforded to new members on this important occasion. Member, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to speak and recognise the opening of the 55th Parliament of South Australia. My congratulations to you, Mr Deputy Speaker, on being elected in this place, re-elected. I offer my congratulations to all the other members of Parliament in this House and all returning members to this place for the 55th Parliament. I also sincerely thank Her Excellency, the Governor, for opening Parliament last sitting week. I thank her for her continued contribution that she is making to our great state, and I especially note her commitment to regional events of significance in my own electorate. It is a privilege not lost on me that I stand here as the first female member of the country electorate that we all know as Frome. And it is with unabashed pride I reclaim this seat for the Liberal Party, as I pledged to do over 12 months ago. My first official order of business is to recognise my predecessor, the newly elected member for Stewart, in his role as Minister for Regional Roads, Local Government and Veterans Affairs. He has been generous in his congratulatory comments to me, and I note that we have a shared passion for better access to mental health services across the Mid-North. I also look forward to working with him in this 55th Parliament to ensure regional SA continues to benefit from state government funding for regional roads. This neighbourly collaboration is bittersweet, however, as I make mention of the outgoing member for Stewart and former Deputy Premier of South Australia, Dan Van Holst-Pellekaan, a gentleman and loyal servant of the Marshall Liberal government who excelled in his portfolio and delivered on our election promises to stabilise the grid. I am the new custodian of an electorate that is named after General Edward Charles Frome, our colony's third Surveyor General, arriving on the ship Recovery in 1839. New Frome is 200 kilometres long, from Tarawi to Two Wells, and it reflects the very best of our state, where the pristine Samphire coastline hosts our precious international bird sanctuary, where the food bowl of the Adelaide Plains meets the golden canola crops of the Mid-North, where the renewable energy landscape of Goyder North runs south into the majesty of World's End Gorge. At its geographical heart is the Clare Valley, where all four seasons are captured in the cycle of a grapevine, and the green canopy of a Riesling varietal can be found draped over the 7 hills of this diverse region. Of course, to single out one winery would be career limiting. If wine isn't your thing, Frome can offer you award-winning authors, poets and painters, Mr Deputy Speaker. C.J. Dennis, author of the Songs of a Sentimental Bloke, was born in Auburn. Colin Teeley, AC, of Stormboy fame, was born in Udunda, and, of course, is featured on the town silo writ large. The Owen silo was painted by Robert Hannaford AM, and he was born and continues to live in Riverton. Younger female art professionals like Alexia Prokopek, Nadine Grace and Alicia Sparks have commissions booked well into next year, with each of them capturing the glory of our stunning landscape. Ian Roberts, OAM from my hometown of Blyth, was my first introduction to the medium of painting. And given it is less than 8 kilometres outside of my electorate, I make no apologies to the member for Narunga that I will poach this town back from him at the very first opportunity. We are also strong in agricultural industry and manufacturing. In 1932, a bushman from Ballally North called Reg Murray Williams started selling pack saddles to Sir Sidney Kidman to make a quid. No Aussie wardrobe is complete now without the distinctive accessories of moleskins and R.M. Williams boots, which he established exactly 90 years ago. Outback SA fashion was iconic before the iconic. Young people get it. In every corner of this electorate, there are signs of an industrious workforce, never resting or relying on others. The Bundaleer Forest, planted in 1875, was in fact our nation's first purpose plantation, while at the southern end of the electorate, Lauke's Mills had expanded to Yadunda and Kapunda. That same copper town is currently serviced by its biggest employer, JT Johnson's hay exporter. Of course, not to be outdone, Balaclava is also serviced by hay exporters Gilmac and Balco. I'm sure that your cupboards are full with San Remo pasta, which has storage facilities in Balaclava and Owen, in order to support its 31-year history of growing and buying durum wheat in South Australia. Early settlers to the mid-north established famous merino studs like Bungaree and Collinsville. We all know the legacy of pastoralist Sir Sidney Kidman, and sadly lesser-known explorers, Mr. Deputy Speaker, like the intrepid World War I photographer and polar explorer Hubert Wilkins from Mount Bryan, or the Penwortham early settler John Horrocks, who was shot by his own camel. True story. As it's History Month, I make quick reference to the copper mining boom which began in Burra and the freight route of the copper loads to Port Wakefield via Horbury and Balaclava. But it is the renewables sector which is the cutting edge of innovation in Frome. Wind turbines at Hallett and the big battery at Hornsdale, which the Marshall Liberal government expanded in 2020, were just the beginning. This year, French company Neoen committed to a $3 billion, with a B, investment into a hybrid wind solar battery storage project called Goyder North and Goyder South. Not to mention a ringing endorsement from the Australian energy market operator AEMO, which described the interconnector from Robertstown in Frome to Wagga Wagga in New South Wales as a critical, no-regrets solution to keeping the lights on in this state. Yeah. It will have safe passage through the Eastern Corridor, hosted by my neighbour, the member for Chaffey. As an educator, it is also important to remind the Chamber that the Roseworthy Agricultural College, established in 1936, was the first of its kind in the nation, while also offering the first diploma of Eonology. Perhaps it is most relevant, though, for me to mention the political contributions from the Mid-North. An honorary mention for Sir George Strickland Kingston, who was the Deputy Surveyor to Colonel Light. He also was our colony's first Speaker of the House of Assembly, should I add, in the old chamber, of course. He represented in this order the seat of the Borough and Clare, and subsequently the seat of Stanley, both encapsulated in Frome. And as the member for Blackwell attest, I'm a former volunteer of this historical home at Kingston House, and therefore I'm quite pleased with that connection. Of personal significance, I note former federal members for Wakefield, Charles Allen Seymour Hawker, Charles Robert Burke Kelly, and Neil Andrew. And I also congratulate the new member for Taylor, my neighbour to the south. In a political twist, my rural district has twice delivered a Liberal member for Adelaide. From Riverton, Trish Worth AM, and preceding her, from Blythe, my dad, Michael Pratt. Yeah. My very first experience of a maiden speech goes back 34 years. It was April 1988 when in Canberra, my father delivered the last ever maiden speech to be heard in Old Parliament House. A week later, my family had the great fortune to attend the opening of the current Federal Parliament House, and if I may channel Sir Robert Menzies, I will never forget the vision of seeing Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II passing by. Now, I could do an entire grieve on the foibles and fearlessness of my father, which he would love, but I won't. People call Pratty, not happening today, not today. People call Pratty when they need help or a laugh or both. Mr. Yellow Pages, I have heard him called, and it's quite fitting. He is an ideas man and a rogue. He has been a Japanese movie industry heartthrob, also a true story, and one of the most entertaining charity auctioneers this state has ever seen. Our family life on the farm at Sandaroo was idyllic, as all flashbacks are. But my parents made some very brave, future-proofing decisions as it became apparent we would need more land just to break even. So when an opportunity came along to run in the 1988 by-election for the federal seat of Adelaide, he threw all his energy at it, defeating Labor in its heartland. Timing is everything in politics. Our family rode the inevitable bumps of losing an election, and it stung us for many years. That adversity held me in good stead for later years, but throughout high school, I only had eyes for a teaching career. It was in 1990, and the nation's treasurer told us this was the recession we had to have. Thousands of families were forced to consolidate finances, and we were no different. We worked our way back, but it took my parents years to recover from double-digit interest rates. And I quickly learned to manage my expectations about hard work versus reward and the importance of good governance and fiscal responsibility. During this challenging time, it was Mum who got us all through. No surprise. She is an elegant, unassuming lady. In her life, she has cooked for shearer gangs and catered for classical concerts. She has fed premiers and consuls. But most people don't know that to help us get by for a decade, my mum worked the 6 a.m. shift at Villiers Bakery, making pasties and making money to keep us going. Rosemary Millicets and her late husband, Vilmos, were very good to our family and many others over decades. And in turn, every member of my family ended up working in Villiers' business. I'm sure it was no accident. And so I echo previous condolences from this place on his passing and recognise the generosity of these two great benefactors to our state. As a Hungarian post-war refugee, Vili was determined that with his bakery, no one that he knew need ever go without food. So I cannot imagine what he would think about the senseless war in Ukraine. Working at Villiers put me through university, and after graduating, I was desperate to return home to the mid-north to teach. In fact, the age gap was right, that if I was lucky, I might end up teaching my younger cousins, and I hope they're watching and tuning in today. You're lucky, you probably dodged a bullet. It wasn't to be. And the Education Department instead sent me to the bottom of the state to teach primary school French instead. I relocated to the frosty climes of the southeast, where I never had to water my garden or install an air conditioner. Teaching in the country changed my life forever. So while I was busy creating lesson plans, driving the school bus, conducting the choir, and coaching the debating team, I was also developing my own views about what good leadership looked like. I became passionate about staff welfare. I was confronted daily by the impacts of long-term generational unemployment and by the positive power of education. The life I live today has been shaped by my formative years as a teacher, and I recognise the positive influence from the following passionate country educators: school leaders Liz Noske, the late Julie Howie, John McCaid, the late Rob Shepherd, and my very special friends Beck Madigan, Sarah Vinal and Helen Widdowson. Collectively, their influence guided me to fight for the rights of individuals. to expect the best from every student and not the worst, to debate curriculum and department policy, and most precious of all, teaching introduced me to brain theory and to neuroscience, which in fact changed my own brain and teaching practice for good. If mechanics must train to understand car engines, and doctors must train to understand anatomy, then every graduate teacher should train to understand how the brain functions. Our entire system of testing and reporting is predicated on a student being able to recall and retrieve information from their long-term memory. Teachers help students to create these lifelong memories. My own memories take me back to days of being a frontline public servant, protecting students from themselves, their family, and sometimes even other teachers' unreasonable expectations. I became a court advocate for students more than once. I conducted risky home visits to drug-dealing parents without hesitation to check on a student's welfare. I was thrust into the world of kinship and residential care agreements, and I understand well the horrors of making mandatory notifications after a student's disclosure. Even still, teaching is a wonderful vocation. It taught me selflessness and sacrifice. I discovered my passion for helping others, fighting for those who don't have a voice, and it taught me how to compromise. Working with students and families, I developed a guiding mantra to manage my expectations but to keep my standards high, and those learnings have travelled with me to this place. Since my swearing-in ceremony, I now have one singular opportunity to outline my own priorities as a newly minted member of the 55th South Australian Parliament. An opportunity to imagine forward to a future where I will be measured against commitments I make today on behalf of the voters of Frome who put their faith in me to represent them with integrity. Even members of the public who remained disengaged and disenchanted with politics and politicians cast their vote back in March and participated in our democratic process that Winston Churchill once deemed the very worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. He added that no one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. But voters are encouraged by mainstream and social media to collectively denigrate this imperfect democracy and participate in a national blood sport of hunting elected representatives until their best or only option is to quit. And so I return to my mantra: manage your expectations but keep your standards high. Just think about it. We all have expectations, but in the political sphere, it is voters who expect much of us. By the Oxford definition, they have a strong belief that something will happen. Reading a quarterly essay in 2012 challenged me at the time to reflect on a voter's perception of politics, on all voters' perception of politics, in fact. And 10 years on, that essay, entitled Great Expectations, holds true. Picking up on an observation made by former Senator Amanda Vanstone, the author, Laura Tingle, opined that voters are angry because they have expectations that have not been met. They are sceptical about why people enter politics. But observing the class of 2022, they should not have any doubt. In 2012, Tingle wrote, "Our expectations of what government will do have seemed to grow over the years. Of course, it will be there to assist us after bushfire or flood, not just with our immediate emergency needs, but also by helping with rebuilding and providing income support. When we travel to war-torn and unstable countries, we expect government to rescue us from trouble and sometimes to get us home." How prescient. Every member here shares an obligation to bring voters along with us as we debate legislation and make laws that must improve the lives of others. we can actually start those conversations in the classroom as well as with our own constituencies. As the member for Frome, I will continue to engage fully with my electors, communicate in a way that does not overpromise nor underdeliver. The Marshall Liberal government met expectations by investing over $100 million in new Frome in pools, schools and clubs alone. I am so very grateful to the members, to the voters in my electorate who placed their trust in me and resoundingly elected a female Liberal member. In Frome, I hope that we continue to manage our expectations and keep our standards high. As I stand here today, I note that I am the sum of my experiences and many people feature in the retelling of my life, such as it is. And I am overjoyed to share this moment with beloved family and friends and publicly extend my deepest love for my parents, Michael and Diane, as well as my auntie and uncle, Meredith and Rob. Every campaign, whether successful or just falling short, demands much from our volunteers and supporters. I'm extremely grateful, not just to those who assisted me during the election period, but to every volunteer and branch member who has ever said yes to helping out on polling day. Of particular note, I wish to thank Malcolm Dixon, who is well known to the Liberal family, was dedicated in his quest to save the repat, and we did, and he continues to be a positive influence on us all. The Frome campaign was fuelled not just by the best schnitzels at the Seven Hill pub, but by the energy of my committee members Richard Daly, Malcolm Bartholomaeus, Craig Honan, Jason Noble, Ian Jenkin, Beck Long and James Long. And I thank you all for your support and for travelling here today. In addition to this, I was assisted daily by Scott Kennedy, Bethany Flight, Anna Siragotis and Sam Diprose, and I'm thankful for their guidance, friendship and expertise. I recognise the presence of former member for Elder, Carolyn Power and her husband Brad, and I thank you for your friendship. I wish to thank our new party leader, the member for Black, for his friendship and encouragement over many years. We seem to have come full circle from my time supporting your own campaign and inevitable entry to this illustrious place in 2014, and I'm proud to echo your own first speech sentiments in return. Thank you for giving me the opportunity as a Shadow Minister to be a strong voice for health and indeed health services in the regions, to promote wellbeing and to be an advocate for ageing. To our state's 46th Premier, I owe much. Thank you to the member for Dunstan. Thank you to the member for Dunstan for his encouragement and belief in my ability to serve our party in any capacity. Moreover, I wish to thank him for his unrelenting service to our state. It cannot be said often enough. I have mentioned all my parliamentary neighbours bar one. The member for Schubert. Thank you for your friendship. You know what it means to me. I'm really excited by the prospect of serving our first term together. We both have a brother living in Perth. And by the virtues of the live broadcast, I send my thanks and my love to James, Anna and little H. I cannot wait to meet my nephew. But you have to make sure that he barracks for the Crows, not the Eagles. And so in sympathy with the member for Morialta, I'm a Crows tragic. And like politics, Aussie rules has afforded me the sweetest of victories and the most bitter of losses. I grew up in awe of the early players, the Jarman brothers, Mods, Roo, Goody, McLeod, and now Tex. But I would jump off the couch for Eddie. He retired after the 2019 season ended and with no chance of playing a farewell game. It was a shame. I'll try and get over it. Elections can be like that. Not every member of Parliament chooses the timing of their departure. And now I'm not planning on going anywhere, but I have taken the opportunity today to use my first speech to preempt my last speech. I love my electorate, I love my job, I love my home, and I encourage you all to come and visit our beautiful region. And as you drive along the Max Fatchen Way, the Horrocks Highway, the Teely Highway, and the R.M. Williams Way, you can be sure you are in Frome. #Regions Matter.